Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, Rishi Sunak has done a mini cabinet reshuffle. What do you make to this? Is it just a little bit of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? Or is this what we need? Is this the A-team to take this country forward in a positive direction? There's been murmurings and rumblings as well about, hang on a second, how come the most senior Northerner is no longer in the cabinet? Has Rishi got anything against us Northerners? I hope not. And I can tell you what has absolutely infuriated me tonight. Have you seen this story? Look at this fella on the screen. Yes, that's right, he is a man. He's even got stubble, but yes, you can see, right, he's got a pink t-shirt, pink shorts and a pink headband, pink nail varnish. He now reckons that he is a woman. Why this is important is because this man was charged for being a paedophile, decided to transition to be a woman when it came to the sentencing. I am very concerned about what this means for child safety in this country. How do you sign a sex register to warn people and make children safe? Are you a man on there? Are you a woman? Are we aware of who is in our neighbourhood and how safe our children are? I will be talking to a lawyer about how this all works. And the deadline to rehouse Afghan refugees away from hotels is today. Do you think the government has achieved their target or not? And I've got a simple question for you. Train stations, do they need ticket offices? Yes or no? There's a plan now, potentially to get rid of about 1,000 ticket offices. But some people are having absolutely none of it, saying that that discriminates against the elderly and the vulnerable. I'll be joined by the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, to discuss that. I've got it all coming your way, but before we get into it, let's grab tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Schools in England must immediately shut buildings made with a type of concrete that's prone to collapse until safety measures are put in place. Some schools will have to relocate children to other teaching spaces. More than 100 schools are being contacted before the start of the new term. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan says it's the right thing to do for both pupils and staff. But the Association of School and College Leaders claims the government knew about the dangers in 2018 and has been too slow to respond. Grant Shapps has been appointed as the new Defence Secretary following the resignation of Ben Wallace. After 4 years in the job, he says he wants to explore different opportunities and spend more time with his family. In his resignation letter, Mr Wallace says the Ministry of Defence is back on the path to being once again world-class. Education Minister Claire Coutinho takes over as Energy and Net Zero Secretary, replacing Shapps. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry says the changes are a temporary measure.
It really doesn't matter how many new jobs Rishi Sunak gives to his friends. It's still moving the deck chairs. They're still a sinking ship. This country really needs change, and the only change that they're going to get is if we get a Labour government, and we get a Labour government soon.
Junior doctors and consultants will be taking joint strike action in England for the first time across September and October. They'll walk out for 4 days in their long-running disputes over pay. The British Medical Association says consultants will strike on September 19th and 20th, with junior doctors also walking out on the 20th of September, followed by strikes on September 21st and 22nd. Both consultants and junior doctors will take strike action again on October 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Emergency care will continue to be provided. A South Wales police officer faces a criminal investigation for dangerous driving after 2 teenagers were killed in Cardiff. 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans died in May when they crashed on an e-bike. CCTV footage captured a police van following the teenagers minutes before the fatal crash. The police officer was previously served with a gross misconduct notice, as was another officer also in the vehicle. Police officers will be automatically dismissed if they're found guilty of gross misconduct under new government plans. Senior officers will have more powers to sack rogue staff and be able to dismiss those who fail vetting checks. The government says the changes could be implemented as soon as next spring. Policing Minister Chris Philp told GB News the rules will strengthen the policing system.
It'll make removal for gross misconduct automatic. It will make sure that specified criminal offences will automatically lead to misconduct, and it will streamline and speed up the process for removing officers either guilty of or accused of misconduct, or indeed of poor performance as well. And there will be nowhere for them to hide. And I think that will help, as you say, rebuild public confidence in policing.
Staff redundancies at Wilko are due to start next week. The GMB union says it's after the only bid to buy the collapsed retailer fell through. The trade union says many staff will arrive at work for the last time on Monday. Though it remains hopeful that a viable buy could yet come forward, it must continue to prepare for the worst. More than 1,000 jobs are at risk. The boss of EasyJet has demanded that a full independent review is launched into the air traffic control failure that happened earlier this week. The airline chief executive said the incident, which wrecked the travel plans of around 250,000 people, must not happen again. Flights to and from UK airports were restricted for several hours on Monday afternoon as national air traffic services were unable to process flight plans automatically. And thousands of holidaymakers have been waiting for days to get home following delays caused by that air traffic control fault. It's despite airline schedules returning to normal and backlogs clearing. Most flights to the UK from popular destinations, including Mallorca, Crete and Sicily, are sold out until the next weekend. The airlines say they're trying to fly people back as quickly as possible. And finally, former US President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to charges in Georgia related to his attempt to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The plea means that he'll not appear in person in court next week to face the charges. He's been charged with 13 felony counts, including racketeering for pressuring state officials to reverse the 2020 presidential election decision. The latest charges mark Trump's 4th indictment since launching his re-election campaign for president in 2024. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you right through till 7 o'clock tonight. For the first time on this programme, I have to say, a face familiar with the channel, but new on Dewbs & Co, the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. Welcome to you. And also alongside us, Navara Media, the co-founder there, Aaron Bastani. Good evening to you too.
Evening.
When I saw your name, it did make me chuckle because on Tuesday, I think it was this week, I had a new face to my panel. So I thought to myself, you know, I'll tease it on Twitter and I put like a little kind of clue, who do you think my new panellist is? And I put a picture of a prawn sandwich, an M&S prawn sandwich, because I thought, to me, that would be obvious. If I said to you, a new panellist, clue, M&S prawn sandwich, you'd say?
Roy Keane.
Right. There's no help.
Well, I was thinking on the football lines. Well, I wouldn't say me, but I've been called worse.
Well, anyway, I despair. That's all I can say about the great British public, because it was Gerald Ratner, the prawn sandwich. He was saying that some of his jewellery... Yeah, it didn't last as long as a prawn sandwich from M&S or something like that.
I could have thought of something more obvious you could have used, Michelle, but not really on air.
No. But anyway, my point was, no one really got my clue. Everyone thought it was Roy Keane, but one person wrote in and said, is it prawn Neeson?
I know.
And it really cracked me up. So when I saw you today, I was thinking, whatever you do, Michelle, don't call a prawn, don't call a prawn, don't call a prawn. I succeeded in calling you Dawn. So welcome. Anyway, you know the drill, you guys at home, and I bet some of you, you're smart. You will have said Gerald Ratner. He was, of course, on my panel on Tuesday. Watch it and catch up if you missed it. Anyway, get in touch with me tonight. What is on your mind? gbviews@gbnews.com. is how you get me on the email, or you can tweet me at GBNews. And speaking of Twitter, a question towards the end of the programme I want to ask you is whether or not you think that a train station should have a ticket office. Let's keep it simple, yes or no. I've got Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He's joining me towards the back end of the programme. He feels very passionately that, yes, those ticket offices should remain, apparently. It's almost discriminating against the elderly and the vulnerable if the ticket stations are not there. Do you agree with him or not? Right, though, into the top story of the day. Have you seen the mini reshuffle that's been taking place? Rishi Sunak is quite busy. There's been lots of criticism and feedback to this. This is a kind of... We were expecting a bit of a bigger reshuffle. That one got delayed, so this is like a little mini one. We've seen now that Grant Shapps, he's the new Defence Secretary, basically. I think this is something like his fifth job, Grant Shapps' fifth job in the space of a year, sorry. And I just wonder, you just heard Emily Formby there saying it's basically, you know, reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. What do you make to it?
Well, I mean, the problem with that comment is it's slightly superfluous, isn't it? Because it's got to do something. I mean, it can't just have a vacancy. But you're right about Grant Shapps. I mean, he has had 7 cabinet roles since 2012, and he's been Secretary of State for Energy, Security, Business, Energy and Industrial, Home Department, Transport, and finally Defence. It's like the magic roundabout, isn't it? But slightly more surreal. The thing is, it's like it's a mini shuffle. Everyone was expecting, as you said, a bigger shuffle, but I think the plan is to do that just before the next election. Now, whether Rishi Sunak is brave enough to do that is another matter. The thing I find quite astonishing about this is that I have got no idea what Grant Shapps knows about defence. He probably doesn't either. I know he's got friends who live in the Ukraine. But there was no red wall MPs used, Michelle, and I think that is so important now to that sort of like, you know, embracing the North, getting those votes back on side, because I think it's dangerous playing that game where he's just really literally got his mates, those that have supported him.
Well, this is one of the points that our new political editor, Christopher Herb, or Chopper, some of you might know him as, this is one of the things that he was talking about on his Twitter earlier on, and he says, and I'm quoting him directly, he reckons there's a massive reshuffle and a government reset plan for October, he says, before the King's speech will be on November the 7th. And he makes a big point about this whole kind of red wall thing. But let's go back to this, the fact that there's this mini reshuffle in the first place, Grant Shapps now in that prominent role. Do you think this is going to make much of a difference in the short term to the government's fortunes?
No, I don't think so. I think it really sums up Rishi Sunak's tenure as Prime Minister in that it's incremental, indecisive, immediately forgettable. You know, the other person who's been elevated, she may be very talented, Claire Coutinho. 99.9% of the public hasn't heard of her. She's 38, apparently very talented. And in a way, it's an interesting mirror image to Rishi Sunak. He seems a reasonably decent capable legislator. He would be a nice Undersecretary to the Treasury or maybe Business Secretary, but he hasn't got that oomph to be the Prime Minister. And this seems one of those moments where that lack of oomph is being sort of reflected in his choices.
When you've got someone like a Boris Johnson that's filled with oomph, you know, and personality and all the rest of it, then you get the criticism, oh, he's a showman, he's got too much oomph. Then you put someone in that's a bit more of a steady Eddie, then it's like, oh, he's not got enough oomph. You can't win.
Well, that wasn't... Oh, I never said that. I think the public wants people in charge who can solve their problems, but you absolutely need to be able to garner people's attention and keep it. Boris Johnson was very good at that, Rishi Sunak less so. Like I say, very capable politician, but you're a figurehead at the top of the government, and I think the choices he's made here, like I say, reflect the fact that he's quite a forgettable, indecisive character.
But don't you think, Erin, that the problem voters have got with this election that's looming very fast is the fact that both parties, both main parties, are led by two men that are exactly like that. They're probably very steady, very capable. I mean, you know, Sir Keir Starmer, a barrister, forensic, boring, fine line. But they're both out of the same mould. But, I mean, as you were saying, Michelle, you're quite right. I mean, Boris Johnson had full of personality. Look where that got us. Donald Trump, full of personality. Look where that got America. What do we want? But, you know, come the next election, everyone's going to be scratching their heads and going, well, I don't know what any of you stand for.
One thing that I was going to say annoys me, but I think everything annoys me these days, so I need to find a different word. One of the things that it just annoyed me. Let's just say what it is. I was listening to Emily Thornberry a second ago on the headlines with Tatiana a second ago, and she was basically saying this country needs change, and that change is Labour. And there's something about politics in this country where I really dislike the arrogance of the two main parties.
Totally.
They sit there and they think it's either Tory or it's Labour, and there's just something about that. And yes, I do understand that that is the kind of first past the post system that we have, but there's something about it I don't like. Am I missing something?
No, you're absolutely right, and I think you're actually capturing something of the zeitgeist, Michelle, because there was a poll out earlier this week from Redfield and Wilton. That doesn't really matter where it came from for your audience. But they found that 44% of undecided voters would be willing to vote for a new party. And perhaps more remarkably, 30%, just under, of both Labour and Tory voters would be looking to go for a new party. So you've got 40% of the public looking for something new and agree with that really the big two have nothing to offer. But as you say, with the electoral system we have, it's very hard to see how something different emerges. And this duopoly we have in politics is, I think it's the most destructive aspect of the Westminster system, frankly.
Yeah, and you know, I ran for election in 2019 as the Brexit Party candidate. And what we did, actually, on reflection, is we just split the vote.
Yes,
so people who were Brexiteers in Hull, West Hull we call it, but Hull West and Hessel is the correct name. Anyway, if you was a Brexiteer, it's like, right, do I go with Nigel's party or do I believe Boris and go with the Tories? What do I do? So in the end, what we achieved is we split the Brexiteers down the middle. We split them. Labour got in through the middle, and actually Labour got re-elected with more people voting against them than voting for them, if you see what I mean.
That's the problem you've got. I mean, people aren't voting for Labour and their policies, they're voting against the current government. I mean, don't you find out when you get to this stage with the government being in power for this length of time, people are going to do that no matter what the policies are on both sides. They just want to get this lot out, as it were. So I just think the trouble we've got before the next election due is we can't change the system in time. So whatever happens, people will be voting against the party in power at the moment, but not particularly voting for Labour because no one really knows what they stand for, including Keir Starmer. But there are alternatives. If you say, Michelle, they're just going to split the vote with the other parties standing.
But then a lot of people watching that will be shouting at the telly saying, God, do not give us proportional representation. They would argue that all you're going to achieve there is hung parliaments and coalitions and all the rest of it.
I think we're going to have a hung parliament in any case.
Well, that was a good argument until 2010, but then since then, of course, we've had two hung parliaments. We've had permanent chaos, really, for the last 10 years in British politics.
Well,
so I don't know if that really has purchase anymore.
Well, if you disagree with PR because of things like hung parliaments, up your game. That's what Aaron says. Get with the programme. Get a little bit more modern in your opposition. Right, I want to take a quick break. When I come back, I think this is such an important topic to discuss. A paedophile, a male paedophile convicted as such, decided then to identify as a female when it came to the sentencing. If you read the media reports that follow this story, she this, she that, she this, she this, I really worry that our children are at risk because of this, and I'll be speaking to a lawyer about that.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Now, I'm going to try and get a picture up on my screen, if I may, because this stopped me in my tracks today. I'm really hoping I can get this picture up, right? So this, I mean, I really don't mean to be rude, right? But unless you're blind, you're probably going to look at this picture, and if I ask you to describe to me what do you see, you're probably going to tell me that you see a man dressed in pink, and I would call that right. But no. Apparently what you're seeing on your screen now is a woman who needs to be referred to as she and her. The reason that this is a very important story is because this man was convicted of being a paedophile. When he then went to court to be sentenced for his crime, that he was found guilty of, by the way, his defence barrister, whatever the terminology is, informed the court that this person now identifies as a woman. Are you keeping up with me? I promise you this world is going mad. I am joined now by criminal barrister Adam King, just to help me understand and help us all get a little bit of clarity about what is going on here and how all of this kind of comes to pass. Adam, first and foremost, thank you for joining me this evening. I've just been showing a picture to my viewers of, sorry to be rude, but what I would call a man convicted as a paedophile, but then decides that they've identified as a woman when it comes to sentencing. How can that be a possible thing in a court of law?
Well, I mean, there's nothing to stop a defendant saying, I am a woman, even though they appear to be a man. But the question then arises, how does a court, how does a judge, how do the other people involved deal with that? There's something called the Equal Treatment Bench Book, which is a set of pieces of guidance for judges, which they must follow in conducting proceedings. And that has a section, chapter 12, you can look it up online, that deals with trans identifying participants, including defendants, witnesses, everyone. That guidance, to put it simply, as a starting point, says that people involved in the court process should be referred to as their preferred gender. So that's the starting point for this.
Right. So then this person was referred to as she, which I find grossly misleading, because then what happens in the media is that media is then, you have to reflect what was going on in the court. So now the media documentation, when you read these stories, it's all about she did this and she did that and she did this and she did that. The bit that concerns me, though, first and primarily, I am a mum to a little one. Lots of my viewers have children, grandchildren, and the rest of it. So this person has now been made to sign essentially the sex register, the sex offenders register. What identity does this criminal, I would say, masquerade under on this register? Are they recorded properly as a male, or can they decide that they want to be registered as a female?
The likelihood is that they will be signing the register as a female. Policy varies from police force to police force, and you could argue that itself is a problem. But generally speaking, police forces' policies on this stuff, gold plates, goes further than the Gender Recognition Act or indeed the Equality Act. And there is a real risk that that somebody convicted of an offence under a preferred female name, when they used to be male, will, for all police purposes, be using that new name. There's a particular problem that arises with the Disclosure and Barring Service. Because you can have someone convicted under one name, their birth name, their male name, let's say. They then elect to change gender, let's suppose, without a gender recognition certificate, although it doesn't make much difference one way or the other for this. And then they commit more offences, are convicted under the new name. The way that the police deal with that is to demand of the convict that they tell the DBS, the Disclosure and Barring Service, of any previous identities under which they might have been convicted, which seems to me to be expecting rather much of convicts, particularly those convicted of sex offences.
Indeed. Let me ask you a final question. Now, as a mom to a little one, I think that I'm entitled somehow, way, shape or form to be able to put some kind of request in, I don't really know how it all works, I must confess, into the police to find out whether or not there are any convicted paedophiles or sex criminals or whatever you want to call them in the vicinity, whether it's my child's school or my home and all the rest of it. Is that right?
Do you know, I'm not sure whether you have the right to that information. I very strongly suspect not. But I am sure that if you go to the police and say, here's this person I'm suspicious of, do they have convictions under any previous identity, you will not get a satisfactory answer to that question.
Well, I've got to be honest, I think this is absolutely appalling, and I find this a real risk to children's safety in this country. I am astonished that this is going on in our criminal proceedings, but I really do appreciate your time, Adam King, there, criminal barrister, to try and help me understand some of this. I'm not sure how much clearer I am. I think all it's actually done is reaffirm to me that this is what is going on. It's wrong.
It's absolutely and completely outrageous, Michelle. I think, and it's not just children we should be concerned about here, it is women as well. And let's not forget, men kill 2 or 3 women every single week in this country. So to have a rapist suddenly identify as a woman and be registered on that sex offenders register as a woman, it's completely hiding the fact. It is absolutely dangerous.
It's actually giving me chills.
And you know what? This case is not unusual. The figures show that men jailed for sex offences are twice as likely to identify as a trans woman than men jailed for other offences. Because and this is like male sex offenders faking identities to move to women's prisons, which they can't do now, thankfully. That law was sensibly changed. But also then register on the sex offenders register as women. And as we all know, women can't rape because you need a penis to rape, and women don't have penises.
Aaron, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the thing that really struck me with regards to this article, because it's in the Telegraph, and there's 2 individuals involved here. Neither of them got custodial sentences. So you've got the person you referred to, and then there's a second individual, Tanya Howes, 66. Both got suspended sentences. The person you've mentioned at the top of the show, or the story rather, got 120 hours of unpaid work alongside that suspended sentence. I know somebody at a protest who threw a stick. They got 2 years in prison. So I just find that more astonishing than anything else. Quickly on the gender recognition certificate aspect, that's the document you need if you want to change your gender on your passport, on your death certificate, your birth certificate, if you get married to somebody or you want to amend your marriage certificate. So I find it very strange. And lots of people, very good, decent people, have to go through an incredibly arduous process to get that documentation. I find it strange that this individual doesn't have that documentation and yet can...
But that's what that barrister was just explaining.
That's what I find incredibly strange.
If you decide, can you refer to me as this? Because I promise you, everybody, when you're bored this evening, wait till I go off air, Google this story, because you will find it astonishing, because the media reflects basically what the court reporter is saying. So this whole story becomes about this woman, she did this and she did that. I cannot understand. I don't know what is going on in society.
Michelle,
why are you OK with this out there?
But you're upset about that aspect of it. To me, there's 2 things here. The fact that they've not got a custodial sentence, I find shocking.
Because they didn't know where to put them. They didn't. That's why it was suspended. If you read that report, we didn't know what to do with this person, so we suspended it.
That's the implicit claim with the second person. I didn't read that in the first one. Maybe I misread it. And that gets my second point, which is this matters if they're being treated differently. That's what really gets important.
Yes. The man that reckons it is a woman, and yet all hail the guy because he's got a pink shirt and a pink pair of shorts on and a pink nail varnish and a stupid pink headband on his head whilst having a face full of stubble. Anyway, he has got 5 convictions for 6 past offences. He was given a 6-month prison sentence, which was suspended. He has to do 60 hours of rehabilitation activity, 120 hours of unpaid work. Get this, everybody. He had 11 indecent photos of children, 2 which were category A, which are the most severe kind of imagery of child abuse, a further 3 of category B, 6 of category C. I've got goose pimples on my arm. This is wrong. This self-ID thing that is going on in this country, yes, I am sure it might help some vulnerable individuals here and there, but we are now seeing time and time and time again that this is being abused. Why aren't we standing up? Why aren't we pushing back against this? Why are we just randomly sitting here looking at pictures of men being described as women, convicted paedophiles, pretending that they are women? I mean...
Because you know why?
You know why, Michelle? Before I explode and blow a gasket.
Because you're accused of transphobic, and that is what happens. You get hate mail and death threats like J.K. Rowling.
Well, do you know what? My priority is protecting children, protecting women. That is my priority. Anyway, I'm getting a right sweat on. I'm getting all het up. Let's look at the weather and how hot it is outside.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a mishmash tomorrow, a misty, murky start. Some places will see a few showers, but some spots will see some warm sunshine too. It's a messy situation because we've got an old area of low pressure hanging around, and these weather fronts have been bringing cloud and rain across many areas through the day. The possibility of 1 or 2 heavy showers just in the far southeast through the night, staying fairly damp and murky and misty over parts of northern England. Ireland, and some of that light rain trickling into southern Scotland as well. Northern Scotland staying dry and clear and quite chilly. Temperatures well down into single figures. Further south, a pretty mild night. Temperatures holding up in the mid-teens for some. Into Friday, as I said, a bit of a mishmash. The Midlands, Northern England, parts of southern Scotland, fairly drab for much of the day, actually. Overcast. Pretty cloudy too for Northern Ireland. Some light rain and drizzle here and there, especially to the east of the Pennines. Further south, something a bit brighter, sunny spells, but there will also be a sprinkling of showers, mostly dry over northern Scotland. 20 degrees here, 23 possibly in the south with some sunshine. A cool feel, though, with that more persistent cloud over northern England, 16 or 17 here. Saturday may also start a bit misty. There'll be one or two isolated showers, but for most of us, Saturday looks pretty good if you're after dry and bright weather. Some decent spells of sunshine and turning warmer with temperatures more widely over 20 degrees Celsius, and Sunday also set fair with some warm sunny spells. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, I hope that you're getting a little bit of sunshine wherever you are, especially if you've got kids or grandkids. I think they've got a few more days left of school holidays in some places. Maybe, just maybe, we might see a little taste of summer coming up after the break. A couple of questions for you. Train stations, should they still have ticket offices or not? How important are they? The Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, will be joining me to discuss that. And also, the deadline to rehouse Afghan refugees out of hotels is upon us. Do you reckon that the government have met their target? You tell me.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, this is Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, till 7 o'clock tonight. The former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Nisa, alongside me, as is the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Well, today it is the deadline for about 8,000 Afghans that were evacuated to the UK in 2021 to have apparently moved out of temporary accommodation. This is basically, in May, these families got a letter from the Home Office saying that they either accept a housing offer that the government had provided or be evicted from the place that they are staying at. Apparently now the government plans to move all 24,500 Afghans out of temporary accommodation by the end of the year. Aaron Bastani, where do you sit on this? Was it a right deadline in the first place? Are we anywhere near hitting it? Should we be, or what?
Well, you put the words UK and Afghanistan together, and pretty much everything's been mismanaged for the last 20 years. And this seems an outgrowth of that. I have to say, I think we should absolutely be accepting every translator who worked with the British Army while we were occupying Afghanistan. Absolutely. I mean, that just seems to me obvious. Also, numerically, it's not that big a number. This particular story about somebody's son being able to join them, I find really sad. And it's something, it really hits on something I've said previously, which is I think that the Conservatives, and this sounds conspiratorial, I think they have big incentives to mismanage the asylum system in this country, because mismanaging it keeps it high on the political agenda, it gets people really angry, and increasingly the Conservatives view asylum as a Hail Mary pass when it comes to winning the next general election. And I actually feel sorry for Conservative voters who are being tricked by it. Because the facts are we had net immigration in this country last year of 600,000. They like to talk about asylum and Afghans and Iranians when actually most people coming to this country aren't from those places. They're coming here perfectly legal from other places. And the victims of all that are people like this child, who is, like I say, the child of a translator. So, who I think has every right to be here. So I think it really just speaks to just complete political mismanagement. Of course, those are two words you associate with the government 7 days a week now.
Oh, harsh words. Harsh final parting shot. Dawn, your thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, this little boy is only 3 years old, is living with his nan and granddad under the most horrific rule that's going on with the Taliban in Afghanistan at the moment. Certainly, we've just been discussing for women and girls in this country not getting treated very well. In Afghanistan, it is hell on wheels. Little girls can't even go to school. So, personally, I would actually airlift every woman and girl out of Afghanistan, let alone the translators.
But listen, there's about 20 million...
I know, but honestly, I know, and I would put them all up in Gary Lineker's house. But I just think it's insane the way that we have treated the people that work for the British forces out there. Their lives at risk every single time they step out of their house. Many are in hiding, certainly the women. There's a female judge, who used to be a judge, who's not allowed out of the house now, that I've kept in contact with, and she can't go out of the house. She was a judge. But because she was sentencing the Taliban when the Americans and the Brits were supposedly running the place, she can't go out of the house or she is dead.
Right, so
it's
what's
absolutely
going
terrifying.
on? Why is this government not helping these people? Let's cut to the chase.
One of the issues we've got here is we have severed all communication with the Taliban. We are not talking to them. And I think almost in a way, although you don't want to be condoning what they're doing in that country, without a line of communication, this problem is not going to get solved. And there are many migrants...
So you reckon we could ring up the Grant Shapps or whoever's got the job today? He's going to ring up the leader of the Taliban. Hi there, this lady, this kid down there, we used to work with them. Can we have them out of your country? Yeah, of course you can.
No. Really? It's not that simple. Of course it's not that simple. But until we have a line of communication with that country, nothing is going to happen. And the few people we have actually got out, and as Aaron pointed out, it was a basket case 2 years ago when we upped and left, literally overnight. We remember those scenes of people throwing their babies into the airport. But there are lots of Afghans...
The Taliban are not going to communicate nice and decently with us about people that helped our regime and handing them over.
We have to at least have a try. Women and girls are dying. This little boy doesn't even know his parents are. There are Afghan translators and their families stuck in hotels in Pakistan in limbo land. We have to do something.
Yeah, I've got to say, I do think this is a stain on our country, actually. And I know many of you might disagree, because a lot of people will say, Michelle, we've got our own problems in this country and we're full and whatever. But, I mean, these people are people that actually helped us, that helped our armed forces, that helped try to keep this country as safe as it possibly could be as well. And I personally do. I think it's shameful that we've just abandoned them in this way. Yes, we can all sit and debate about barges and all the rest of it, But that's for people that I would argue are economic migrants, for these people that really desperately put their lives on the line for us. I feel like we owe them a service. Do you agree or not? Also, let me ask you on this as well. Do you think that ticket offices in train stations are needed or not? There's been a big march over to Downing Street today to basically rally against the planned ticket office closures. What do you make to it? I'll be talking to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, about that in a second.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. We're with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Lots of you getting in touch with the topics that we have been discussing on the show so far tonight, and I'll be reading out some of your comments before the end of the show. But as I've been speaking to you, Save Our Ticket Offices, a group that have been marching over to Downing Street en masse to protest against the potential closures of train ticket offices up and down the country. Now, apparently, train operators and the government want to close almost 1,000 ticket offices across England. I have to say, there's been a bit of a storm brewing around the consultation period and how it's going to work, etc. The consultation is currently due to close on this topic at 23:59 to be precise tomorrow. Also as well, we've seen 5 Metro mayors taking legal action against the government over this, and I'm very pleased to say that one of them joins us now. That is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. Good evening to you, Andy.
Yeah. No sound.
I can see you and I can also hear you.
Nothing.
I was just about to marvel in his suntan there, but he's fiddling with his earpiece. I'm not sure if he can hear me, but any second now I shall reconnect. He looked like he was stood in a glorious garden, all getting ready to talk to me then, didn't he? I'll come to you first,
Yeah.
Aaron. You're not quite as suntanned as Mr. Burnham looked then. So
If only.
I know. Wouldn't it be nice to go on holiday somewhere? Anyway, ticket offices, are they essential in train stations, yes or no?
If you're older, if you're disabled, absolutely. And those are the two sort of groups of people who are really pushing back on this very strongly, and I think quite right too. This is no country to be old and to be poor. And, you know, this is just another little sort of hammering away at the quality of life for people like that, whether it's buses, whether it's housing, if you don't own, and now with public transport and trains. So that's one aspect of it. And then a second one is...
No, we'll have to wait with bated breath
Go on.
For you to come
Get
on
the
to
big
your
man
second
on.
point, everybody, because Andy Burnham, I'm assured now he can see me and he can hear me. Andy Burnham, good evening back to you. So I've just been bringing the viewers up to
hi,
speed.
Michelle.
Hello
Lost you
there.
there.
Yeah, we was just reflecting, we was marvelling on your wonderful suntan whilst you couldn't hear or see me. Anyway, look, ticket offices in train stations. I've just been bringing my viewers up to speed with some of the storm that has been brewing. So question to you, quite simply, why do you feel that we need ticket offices in train stations in this day and age, all the technology as it is?
Well, I think they're massively important, Michelle, because when people travel, it's a stressful experience and often you need to speak to people. And the thing is this, if the government thinks ticket offices only sell tickets, well, they've got that drastically wrong because people go in there for a whole host of reasons. You mentioned 1,000 ticket offices. Well, these are really important services in the heart of communities up and down England. Just to say that we can just take them away, well, honestly, I don't think the public are there with it. But there's a second reason. And let's just go with the thing that, you know, most people buy their tickets these days digitally, and a lot of people do. But on the government's figures, 12% of people don't. And they are people without access to online connectivity, or they will perhaps be disabled people, older people, who don't buy their tickets that way. Are we really saying that those people don't matter? For that reason, I would say these proposals are downright discriminatory, because many disabled people physically can't use ticket machines. They're not online. What are they meant to do? It's going to force those people off the railways. I was speaking to people representing those with dementia yesterday. They say it will force many people with dementia off the railways. You know, at a time when we should be encouraging people to use public transport, the government are doing the precise opposite.
But isn't some of the counter-argument to that what they're trying to do is get away from the static ticket office and move more towards what they would perhaps call like a roving staff member situation where, yes, you've still got somebody, so they're there if you need them, but they're not just stationary in a box hoping that someone might want to buy a ticket?
Well, that's part of their argument, but the problem with that argument, Michelle, is it's not that they're going to have people around for the same amount of time that the ticket offices will be open. The plans for Greater Manchester show that they're going to have people there for an hour a day or something like that. There are massive cuts behind these plans. So they're taking people off the railway. And so that means the support won't be there for people when they're travelling. I mean, we all know what it's like. Sometimes, you know, there's a cancellation, a delay. It's definitely like that up here in the north of England. People are often facing chaos on the railways. And then, you know, people get stressed and they need to find out more. They want to go and talk to somebody where they know they will find that person behind the glass in the ticket office. You know, what's this all about? Many of the ticket machines up here, Michelle, are cashless, and I know this is an issue that you've been raising on GB News. You know, what are we saying to people who don't have bank accounts, bank cards, who don't like to pay in that way? Again, are we just going to force those people off the railways? There's so many issues here, and I honestly don't know why the government are proceeding with what they are doing. Myself and other mayors, 4 of us, are looking at taking legal action against these plans, and we are very much going to fight these plans all the way. We believe they are not complicit with the law, not compliant with the law, because they've run a wrong process here where they should have run a 12-week process, but also because of the discriminatory impact of them on disabled people and older people, they're not compliant with equality legislation either. It's just a bad idea all the way through.
But let's talk brass tacks there, because I am on this issue. I have to say I can see both sides of the fence. The flip side to what you're saying is that when you look at how we use the railway these days, the whole fabric of society in many cases has changed. Many people don't commute anymore. They stay and work from home. That's kind of changed. And it's made people, we've had all of this strike days, many strike days. I think the RMT alone in this current wave, I think they're on day 34 when you count this weekend as well. So people have started to reorganise away from the railways. So some of these train companies would argue that actually we need to make cost savings, and that's why we're doing this, so that we can continue to provide the service that you reference.
But I don't think they're savings, Michelle, when they deter people from using the railways, when you're pushing people away from the railways. I've been told by my experts in Greater Manchester that these proposals will actually cost money, not save money. Why? Because, as I've said before, they'll push many older people, people with dementia, disabled people away from using the railways. So that will shrink the revenue that the railways are bringing in. And I don't think they will actually save money in the long run. I think it's clear now why the RMT are fighting back against what the government is doing to the railways. It looks like the government are putting the railways in managed decline. Shrink it back, cut it back, and just leave it as a sort of a threadbare, bare bones service for some people, but not for everybody in every community. I think we've got to fight back here, Michelle. You know, we can't accept this. You know, we've lost post offices. We're losing other services from communities. Why should we just accept that ticket offices can be ripped out of communities up and down England? I don't accept it. I won't accept it for Greater Manchester. I don't want them to close the 50 offices here. I am fighting back for older people, for disabled people, actually for everybody who cares about the railways and wants more people to use them, not less.
And do you think if we keep these ticket offices, I can tell you now, there's a lot of support for what you're saying coming through on my inbox from my viewers. Do you think then people, if we say to people, you know what, guys, we'll keep the ticket offices, but we're going to increase your fares to cover the cost of that, do you think that would be fair or not?
Well, I honestly don't think they need to do that because, as I said before, Michelle, if you give people confidence to use the railways, that brings in more money to the railways and therefore that pays for what we've always had in this country. We've always had ticket offices. Why are they suddenly unaffordable? And can I just remind everybody, Michelle, we pay sky-high prices for our rail tickets in this country, higher than pretty much anyone else in Europe. Are we really saying that we can't afford to keep open the offices where those tickets are sold? Are we saying that Manchester Piccadilly cannot have a ticket office, an office that's so full every single day when people are travelling? You know, this is beyond party politics, Michelle. It isn't just sort of point scoring. You know, I'm pleased to hear that your viewers are coming out in support of what I'm saying, because I think this kind of goes to the heart of what kind of country we are. Are we going to become a country that just becomes faceless, soulless, cashless, where you just kind of force people out and you say, well, 12% of older and disabled people like to buy their tickets in person? Are we the kind of country that says, well, those people don't matter, forget about them? If they're not online, tough luck. Well, I honestly don't want to live in a country like that. I think we're better than that, and that's why this fight is a fight worth having for ticket offices, but actually more broadly than that. Britain feels pretty broken to me at the moment. You know, we've had sewage going into our rivers and seas all summer. We've got energy bills that people on ordinary salaries can't afford, and we've got railways just in total chaos and now being cut back beyond the bare bones. When are we going to fight back against all of this? And I'm talking about fighting back people of all parties. You know, I am not prepared to see these services just taken away. This is one on which we need to come together and say, no, you're not going to do this.
Andy Burnham, that is the Mayor there of Greater Manchester. Your message was heard and understood. Thank you very much for your time. You know what that is? All we've got time for. I was itching to get you in. I could hear you nodding away in agreement. Lots of you guys are saying, Barry, for example, you just popped up. I totally agree with Andy Burnham. Lots of you are saying that you want ticket officers in this country when it comes to train stations. Pleased as well to hear him agreeing with us about what we've been saying here about stop cancelling cash in this country. And by the way, he talks about standing up and fighting against things. I will end, if I can squeeze it in, with that ridiculous picture. I want you all to go away and think about it. You can think about it in your sleep tonight. The image that I was going on about earlier on in the programme, can I bring it up for you before we go and say farewell? Yes or no? I hope that I can. This is the convicted paedophile that was convicted of paedophilia as a man and now reckons he is a girl. The self-ID situation in this country is being abused, and women and children, if you ask me, are being put in danger. That is something that we have to stand up and say no. Rishi Sunak, stop tinkering around with your cabinet and focus on what is really important in this country. Anyway, look, time flies when you are having fun. Don Neeson, I've never in all my life seen a panellist that comes so organised.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me.